guys. How you doing? Dev, 10 days left on the PowerNerd record. I've opted to mix it myself. After all these years of going through the process, I should know by now that the way that I record, and the way that I produce, and the way that I write is something that I have such an intrinsic connection to that mixing it myself makes the most sense. It's been a very challenging record. They all are, though. It's been a very challenging period in order to get the focus to complete and do the recordings and the mixes and all the peripheral things in a way that are correct and in line with the original vision. It requires me having all these aspects of my life that are separate from music sort of in line and under some degree of control, and none of them have been. So to be able to focus on the work in the way that it deserves has required a certain type of mental tenacity that was unexpected. I start the Moth on May 31st, so PowerNerd has to be wrapped up by then. It'll be the first time that Steve Vai and I, excuse me, Steve Vai and I have been in the same room creating music in 30 some odd years. So PowerNerd is needing to be done by the very latest, the 30th, and that's everything. I've been able to strategize and get my time management in order enough to do what has been required for this to come to light. But the practicalities of making this work during this particular period has been difficult on a time management level, just because there's been a lot of things that need my attention in life, and all those things happen during the day. So the time that I've had to really dig into some of the more psychologically demanding aspects of this production slash mix slash composition can only really feasibly happen at night, when all those external stimuli are no longer an issue. But I'm not a night owl, right? Like a good schedule for me is you wake up at 6:30 in the morning or 7 and go to bed at 10 at night. And it's been the opposite. I've been going to bed at 4:30 or 5 and waking up at 10:30 in the morning, and that's a bit of a pill to swallow, just because I've not been nocturnal for a long time. The record was meant in the beginning to be a reasonably easy and lighthearted affair, but what becomes more and more obvious to me the older I get and the more that I do this is that whatever you're feeling is going to come out inevitably. So best laid plans to make something lighthearted and free-spirited will almost invariably act as simply a platform, with that as the aesthetic that whatever you're feeling is going to be presented as. So if you've gone through a bunch of things in your life that are very specific, and in the beginning you chose to do something that was more lighthearted, the combination of those two, which is sort of what's happened with this, will sort of meld, where you'll have this, on one hand, structurally and conceptually simple type of musical thought, but then all the other things that I'm going through in my life, of which at this point there are plenty, it all just comes out, and then before you know it, you're like, God, this is emotionally really demanding. It's not what I thought it was. So the difficulty has been keeping it simple, like I've mentioned before, keeping interested in it, and not on a song level, not on a songwriting level, because the songs are very cool, but within those structures are very much more straightforward chordal arrangements, and these sorts of things on a technical level are harder to stay focused on. So things like that were a couple of examples of the way in which this record ended up being challenging in ways that I hadn't anticipated. And I think that's funny, because so many records in, I sound like a broken record every time, you know. Like, this one ended up being more difficult than I thought. Well, that's just what it is. And I have 10 days, and I have to have it done in 10 days for a couple of reasons. First, because it can't extend past that with the Moth. And I promised. I told everybody in my professional world that that would be done. But that also includes bonus tracks, an Atmos mix, the album itself, liner notes, artwork, all these things. And the strategy that we've had to implement to get all those things ready to be delivered in time, compounded now by having to mix it, have been fairly rigid. Like, it's like, we have to have this done by this point, we have to have this done by this point. The only thing that I failed to be able to deliver in time was rough mixes to label management and the people who are going to be responsible for promoting this. They're like, we don't even know what you're making. Yet the same reason why I failed to be able to deliver those rough mixes is the same reason why I was unable to mix it with somebody else. And that is, I wrote it in a new way and very quickly. Therefore, in order for it to be what I feel it can be, there's significant amounts of modification and refinement that have gone into each one of the songs. So that, you know, I might change where the chorus, how long the chorus is, or how quickly it gets to that verse, or, you know, what this drum fill does, or what the guitar sounds like, or any number of things. And so the songs have been fluid in the way that they feel and come across, and to present rough mixes to anybody during that period is, number one, going to take up valuable time, and number two, very possibly going to give the wrong impression to the people who I'm going to be working with on this. That is only going to cause problems for me at this stage. I don't know, any of you who are musicians, you may relate to this experience where maybe you have made a demo of a record, just whipped it off, and then shared it with your significant other or your friends or whatever. And then they listen to it over and over and over while you're working on the actual record. And then when you finally get the record ready and you present it to people after all the work that goes into it, the reaction you get is, oh, I preferred the demo. Why did you change that? I liked that, how it was. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that part was better that way. It's just you get used to it. And then when it changes, it's hard to shift your focus. So by sending out material to people, specifically with a record like this, where the process has been so fluid and so constantly kind of refining itself, once I deliver the final thing, if the first comments that I get back from people are like, well, why did you change this? You know, I liked what you had done in the demo or what have you. I just don't need that right now. There's been a lot of stumbling blocks on this record. There's been a lot of stops and starts. There's been a lot of things that I thought were going to happen and they just didn't. Circumstantial things. I'm sure it's the same with you, but everybody in my life I'd say about 65 to 70% of the people in my life whom I care about are going through a lot of things that I feel my role in a lot of it is to be stable for people, you know, is to be there for people when they need me. But there's really a heaviness to the suffering of people around you that you care about that makes sitting in front of a computer and working on music, I think in the past it used to be like an escape for me, you know. But now it doesn't function that way. It's almost like my work functions best when I'm not thinking about anything else. When I'm not thinking about the suffering of people whom I care about. When I'm not thinking about the things that need to be done in my life on a practical or like physical level. And I guess that's different than how it used to be. I guess music for many years was not only my job, but it was also a hobby and it was also a distraction. Now music is a report in a sense. And PowerNerd and the Moth in particular are two very pivotal moments in my career. I mean, I've been doing this for so long. And if you've been here for the ride, thank you. And if you're new, welcome. But these two records they're like a pivot point in my career. I never know what these records are about until the very end, and now I'm at the end of PowerNerd. I feel what it's about. I think it's about kids leaving home and how that feels as a parent. Spoiler alert, not great. It's about death. It's about learning to make peace with death. Specifically, you know, as you get older and people start passing away, and you know, your parents or you know, all the people in your life that are struggling with that or illness or whatever. It's like, it's one thing to bury your head in the sand and never think about that. But I think Western society in general has suffered from the absence of being present with dying. So much of the lyrical content of PowerNerd has been about loss and change. But a change like I haven't gone through before. PowerNerd has documented that, and unexpectedly, it was supposed to be this dumb record. It's not. It's like heavy. It's cool though. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. I think it's awesome. Who knows? But not in my entire career have I had a transitional period that has been as overt as this one. Maybe key, but it lacked a maturity that this one has, and a perspective that has come from that maturity that this one has. Like I say, I start the Moth on May 31st. It's like, what, 2 weeks? And again, first time Steve and I have written anything together in years, potentially ever. And there's a certain gravitas that comes with that. And PowerNerd is just like right before it, it's like, hey guys, before I go there, here's an overview of the chaos set to something that's easy to listen to. But it's not cool, I don't think. I don't know what cool is. Maybe that's where the significance of this transitional record will be for me in the long term, is me recognizing that who I am as a 52-year-old man had been perhaps in the past augmented in my professional world by what I assumed people thought would be appropriate, or what I assumed people thought was cool, or what sort of aesthetic was cool professionally and in the scene. But it's so fragmented now, the scene and music in general, that so much of what PowerNerd has asked of me is for me to make peace with what it is versus what I think it should be. And a bunch of it isn't, it doesn't fit in anywhere. It doesn't fit, it's too this, or it's not enough that, and so a lot of the strength that's come in order to persevere through it is just to be like, yeah, it's not cool in that sense, but it's what is appropriate for you. And just kind of closing your eyes and making that decision is a testament to not only how far I've come, but also what this particular period in my life and our lives seems to entail. I've got certain lyrics to finish. As soon as I finish this update, I head in there and I start finishing the vocals. There's this profound sense of, towards the end of a record, of just not wanting to finish, but also simultaneously wanting it done. And that's where I'm at, and I have 10 days. I wrote down this quote the other day. It says, "Life is uncertain, and the antidote is not seeking certainty, but fostering self-trust so that you can deal with whatever happens." And that's what I'm doing. And it works. It's funny, I think back to every record, I think back to the frames of mind that we're in. And there's such an aesthetic to each one. It's just so what it is, right? Like I think back to Puzzle and how I felt during Puzzle, and I think back to Empath, and I was just so torn up at the end of Empath when I was mixing it, trying to make peace with it, and remember Alien and being just so blown apart and just awful, and Infinity and all the psychological unhealthiness that went along with that, and Ocean Machine and like the real bleak thing that went along with that. And it's so hard to describe what they are other than to try and get the record right and try and get the aesthetics of the record right. But then I think of this one, I think of PowerNerd, and I know that even though I'm in it right now, I'm going to look back at it and I'll remember this. It's like this gray, light blue, bold. Right now it feels like life. But in 2 weeks it'll be Moth, and it will be a whole different thing that we'll be chasing. And PowerNerd is just, it's like blunt but refined. It's been a difficult project. It's been a difficult period. The nature of these YouTube videos is to document that, good, bad, and ugly. By the time I do the next update, I will probably only have 3 or 4 days left on this project. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to go through it. I hope it's as awesome as I think it is. I just want to play guitar right now. All I want to do is just play guitar. Just doing this. I'm so grateful to this company for building this guitar for me. It's been such a comfort. This Kiesel. And it's, you know, I know that maybe the majority of people that would play this wouldn't, they'd be like, why? What? But it's just so perfect for me, and it's been such a comfort, and it has allowed me to get my thoughts in order while I've been processing the myriad of experience and, frankly, the drama that's gone along with life over the past couple of months, the entirety of this process, essentially. To have this little beautiful, natural, ambient guitar to do this with. I've been grateful for so much over the past every day I'm just like, man, I'm so grateful for this, and even the bad things or the difficult things. I'm grateful for them because they yield things that I hadn't anticipated and makes the intricacies of the patterns of interconnectedness that I see in my life and the world. It underlines my need to surrender to it and to not try to quantify it or understand it, just to be present with it. And the way that I do that is prior to working, I sit and I just play guitar and I make these sort of clouds of sound. I've got maybe 8 of the Dream Piece albums that are sort of on the burner. And this guitar has been this constant companion to me during the difficulty that has been this particular period. I'll say it again, I think PowerNerd as a record is probably just about kids leaving home. If you're a parent and you've been through that, it's like, yeah. And it's about death. So it's been very emotionally heavy. But I think it's really great. I'm sorry the fatigue that I am putting forward here is so palpable. It's just we're at the end of a process, and that's what it is, man. I set up a yoga mat in the studio. I got rid of my table and put a yoga mat there just so I can keep it at bay, you know? Reacting to things with control allows me, at least, to navigate what comes into my life. And PowerNerd as a title has never been more appropriate to me than it has been over the past couple of weeks. Get through it, guys. My gratitude for being able to do what I do knows no bounds. Thank you for helping me do so. I look forward to this one being done and Moth starting. Take care of yourself. I hope your project's going well. I'm getting to work. I'll see you soon.